The Japanese Communist Party is the oldest political party in Japan, having been founded in 1922. It has its origin in two distinct groups, Christian Socialists and young Western-educated intellectuals. The Christian Socialists, through the example of Jesus, wished to help the poor and disenfranchised by creating a more equal society, while the intellectuals, during their studies abroad, saw the growing labor movements in America and Europe, met Russian political exiles, and were interested in bringing their ideals back to Japan. Motivated by the success of the Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution and the founding of the Soviet Union in 1922, many leftists around the world were hopeful that further communist revolutions could now succeed in their home countries. The Japanese Communist Party was soon founded afterwards in secret with the support from the Communist International in Moscow. However, many party members were soon imprisoned as they called for the overthrow of the government and the deposition of the emperor. This would go on for the next 2 decades, and it was not until 1945 when the American occupation freed all political prisoners and legalized the party, were the JCP formally allowed to enter politics. They soon eclipsed, however, on the right by the Liberal Democrats, and on the left by the Japanese Socialists, with Japan even having their first socialist prime minister in 1947. And these two parties would go on to serve as the two largest forces in Japanese politics from 1955 to 1993, in what is known as the 1955 system, with the JCP playing a very minor role in national politics. While the JCP see the conservative LDP as their greatest opposition, for the past half-century, their greatest rivals have been the Komeito, who are in many ways their political mirror images. The Komeito, although they are their own political party, are seen as a wing of a Nichiren Buddhist organization called the Sokogakai, who, like the JCP, were founded in pre-war Japan and persecuted by the imperial police due to their opposition to the government. After being released from prison by the Americans, the Sokogakai began to become increasingly involved in politics, causing them to come into conflict with the communists. However, this wasn't due to the differences between the two groups. Instead, it was due to their similarities. Both the JCP and Sokogakai supported social welfare, pacifism, anti-nuclearism, and were against the remilitarization of Japan. This led both parties to compete against each other to gain the support of the same disaffected communities, who felt left behind by the social and economic changes in post-war Japan, with the most notable groups being young adults, the working poor, and rural workers who had moved into the cities from the countryside. The JCP also included the newly founded labor unions, while the Sokogakai sought the support of middle-class families. As it was the Cold War, and due to the JCP's opposition to the US-Japanese alliance, it led there to be hopes for them to build stronger international relationships with the USSR and China. However, over time, the JCP gradually became estranged from the leadership of both countries. This because under the long-term leadership of Kenji Miyamoto, the party abandoned armed struggle and instead committed to achieving change through the democratic process, which angered the Soviet Union. And due to their commitment to pacifism and democracy, by the 1960s, the JCP began to see these two great powers as increasingly repressive and imperialistic, most notably highlighted by China's Cultural Revolution in 1966 and the Warsaw Pact's invasion of Czechoslovakia, which crushed the liberal reforms of the Prague Spring in 1968. Remembering the repressions the Japanese communists themselves had faced for decades under the authoritarian rule of the Japanese Empire, the JCP distanced themselves from both Moscow and Beijing, and began expelling the more radical members of the party. They would even go on to welcome the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, and in more recent years have become vocal critics of China's repressive government, due to their persecutions of the peoples of Hong Kong, Tibet, and Xinjiang, which only helped to increase their rivalry with the Komeito, who wished to improve the Japanese-Chinese relationship. Due to these breaks from other international communist parties, the JCP began to build more localized support networks, or Koenkai, composed of labor union members, intellectuals, including both students and university professors in the Teachers Union, as well as members of the Korean minority in Japan, to help the party during election time. During elections, a major issue the party continues to face is that of financing. The JCP is the only elected party that refuses government funding, and instead opts to raise money purely through membership dues and by selling copies of their newspaper, Akahata. However, they also have a history of losing a lot of those funds during election time by attempting to run communist candidates in every district across the country, even if they have little to no local support. And since it costs 3 million yen per district just to register a candidate for the House of Representatives election, the JCP have lost millions of yen by attempting and failing to compete in every single district. This has also resulted in a spoiler effect, where the various left-wing opposition parties, instead of working together to run a single candidate in a district to beat the LDP opposition, instead choose to run multiple candidates from their own parties, dividing the opposition vote and allowing the LDP to easily win in the first-past-the-post system. Also, due to their revolutionary past, the JCP are still considered a threat to the government, and are the only political party to be routinely monitored and harassed by the police, making running campaigns during election time that much more difficult. And over time, as the establishment LDP has begun adopting more progressive social and economic policies, such as support for gay marriage and increased social welfare, as well as forming an alliance with the JCP's rivals, the Komeito, it has made it very difficult for any opposition party to present any alternative visions for the future, because if any policy is popular enough with the general public, the LDP will simply absorb it into their party platform. However, as a result of this, the JCP have also begun to be more adaptive as well. In recent years, they have accepted the existence of the Emperor and the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, but are still committed to pacifism and the democratic process. Today, the biggest issue facing the JCP is a common one facing several parties in Japan. The membership is very old, and like the LDP, the JCP has become a multi-generational party, with many current members being the descendants of those first members who first built the party after World War II. And with very low levels of youth participation in politics, it has become very difficult for the party to grow. Also, since the mainline Liberal Democratic Party has been in power for almost 70 years, they're seen as a more practical option if people want to get more involved in politics. At the same time, the JCP has managed to survive through 101 years of war and persecution to become the largest non-governing communist party in the world, and that is commendable. However, in order to survive, they're going to need to better adapt their message to a younger generation who can then carry the party forward for another 100 years. Thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you next time.